So I was worried when I first saw the spec sheet for the Fold 6, and it appeared to be a fairly minor update over last year's Fold 5. There was some slight design tweaks, including an IP dust rating for the first time, plus the annual processor update, and well, that's about it. Cameras are the same. Battery capacity, the same. Storage and RAM, same. Instead of focusing on hardware improvements this year, Samsung has gone hard on its AI functionality. And while there are some truly phenomenal innovations in this space, the vast majority of the AI use cases on the phone are garbage. Pure, unadulterated garbage, which makes the price increase that Samsung introduced for the Fold 6 much, much harder to swallow. So, what is the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6 offering? Well, this is Samsung's flagship foldable phone and it looks the part. The phone is a single millimeter wider when folded, but shaves a bit off the height and the depth. This means that it's a little more comfortable to hold single-handed when folded. You can swipe around and use the phone like a traditional smartphone easy enough, taking photos and playing games without having to open the device. And when you do open up the fold, you get to play with a large 2176 by 1812 resolution AMOLED 2X display with a 21.6 to 18 aspect ratio. It's still something of an awkward shape for content consumption, though Samsung lets you pin multiple windows around the place for multitasking, which makes that awkward shape a bit easier to manage. Powering the phone is the same Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor seen in the Flip 6 and the 24 Ultra, along with 12GB of RAM and either 256GB, 512GB or 1TB of storage. Because of the foldable design, there are 5 cameras in this phone. There's a 10 megapixel pinhole snapper on the front display with a 4 megapixel under display camera on the internal screen. Around the back, you get a 50 megapixel wide camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel telephoto lens. That's the same collection you'll find on last year's model as well. And while it's not overly noticeable, Samsung has refined the Fold 6's design to give it an IP48 dust and water resistant rating. That doesn't mean you should take it to the beach and go swimming with it though, but it is noteworthy as it's the first Samsung Fold phone with a dust rating. From the start of the year, Samsung has lent heavily on its AI functionality, and it's no different with the Fold 6. Fundamentally, Samsung seems to have decided to focus a lot more on the software side of the phone this year, with specific AI functions that take advantage of the phone's dual displays. Honestly though, the more I use the AI features being pitched as key selling points for these devices, the less I find them useful. Given the limited hardware improvements, it doesn't really bode well for the rest of this review. The biggest reason to buy the Fold 6 is that internal 7.6-inch display. And yes, there is a crease which is noticeable and distracting. But the fact that you can use a phone that converts into a tablet is still a miracle. Performance is solid, as you would expect. Benchmarks are high, battery life is good enough to get you through a day and a bit, and the phone can tackle just about anything, from intense gaming to complex spreadsheets. And while it's nothing new, I found using Samsung DeX with the Fold 6 to be surprisingly rewarding. I took the phone out with the Espresso Display's Touch 15, and although the phone itself wasn't powerful enough to power the monitor and the phone, being able to use my phone as my computer was super convenient. And I'll also throw in camera performance as something that's good here. The lenses didn't get an upgrade this year, but they're still solid. Samsung phones still take some of the best photos on a smartphone, and while I don't think that the Z Fold 6 compares to the S24 Ultra for camera performance, it's good enough to celebrate. The only real downside with the cameras is that it makes the phone extremely uneven on a desk. Like the phone rocks and pivots and shakes and wobbles, so you'll probably need to add a case. On the AI front, Samsung was talking about its Interpreter AI app way back at the S24 Ultra launch, but the arrival of the Fold 6's twin screens makes it so much more powerful. By folding the screen halfway up, you can use both the internal and external displays to have a conversation with someone in a different language. And because it uses both screens, the person you are talking to can tap on the external display to respond, and it will translate their message back to English for you. I've seen live demos and I've played around with it at home, and it is truly impressive. It's a truly wonderful piece of technology with quick translation and clear audio to hear what's being said. It's almost science fiction in how it works, and I'm still impressed. But it's also not something I'm likely to use very regularly. Sure, if you travel overseas a lot or work with people from different backgrounds, this is a game changer. But for most people, it's in that category of being a cool feature that they won't use. The other cool AI function I loved was the transcription service in the voice recorder app. Being able to transcribe an interview without having to type it all out is a miracle for someone like me. Yet, is it enough to sway me to buy the phone? Probably not. So, now I want to talk about some of the things that the Galaxy Z Fold6 could improve. From good AI features to the less impressive. I have very firm opinions on using AI to replace creative work. Part of that is because I know it's really hard to make a living as a creator. But more than that, AI generated content is just not good. At the Australian launch of the Z series foldables, Samsung spent a lot of time talking up the Portrait Studio function, which converts any portrait photo into a piece of art in one of 4 styles: comic, 3D cartoon, watercolor, or sketch. While there is a certain surprise that the fax software can generate these portraits at all, after trying them on multiple photos, I have to say, I hate these images with every fiber of my being. Sure, there's some vague resemblance to the original image, but not one single creation impressed me. They all look generic, and they look generic because they are generic, and there's no flair or originality like an artist would produce. Even more disappointing than portrait creation is the AI sketch-to-image tool. Look, I don't even know where to begin with this one. I'm sure there's a use case for someone somewhere out there, but I can't ever imagine wanting to have my below average sketches turned into below average images. While I was reviewing the Fold 5 last year, Samsung sent it along with one of the S Pen cases, which holds a special version of the S Pen stylus for the foldable screen. And this year, with the Fold 6, I didn't get that case or the S Pen. And what that really highlighted was how much the Fold's tablet screen really benefits from having that stylus. I don't think that the lack of the stylus would bother me so much if it weren't for the fact that Samsung increased the starting price for the Fold 6 this year. And as we've seen, there aren't that many hardware improvements to justify that increased cost to the user. Now, I admit the cost of living applies to manufacturers and components, and Samsung is just passing on the cost of the increased component cost to consumers. I get all of that. But I do feel that bundling an S Pen, if not the case, would help alleviate the frustrations of having that price increase in the first place. Samsung has been dominant in the foldable phone market for a few years now, but this year it seems the competition is starting to catch up. The Moto Razr 50 Ultra is a better phone than the Flip 6. Google's also just released the Pixel 9 Pro Fold in Australia, which promises to challenge Samsung's dominance in the foldable space. With the added competition, I'd really hoped that Samsung would have doubled down on innovation with the Fold 6. But instead, it iterated. Now, don't get me wrong, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold6 is a solid phone, and it does a solid job across its feature set. It takes really good photos, it effortlessly plays games, it lets you swap between candy bar and tablet modes effortlessly. But it's also one of the most expensive phones you can buy right now, with a starting price of 2,749 Australian dollars. The AI functionality is too hit and miss to make it an essential purchase. If you're after a folding phone, then you've probably already got one. And if you're on the fence, I believe you would probably be better placed with an S24 Ultra or waiting for the upcoming iPhone 16. Thanks for watching. Head along to bttr.reviews
to read the full review, and don't forget to like and subscribe.